Hey guys, my name is keninondang. So today I'm going to teach you how to fly the Airbus A320neo in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So today I'm going to fly from Soekarno-Hatta International Airport in Jakarta. I'll be starting displaying on gate 92, that is on Terminal 2 Echo. And the departure seat will be Charlie Alpha 2 Delta 25 right. We will take off at runway 25 right in Jakarta. Our arrival star will be Suli 1 Bravo in Ambon, and we will land at runway 04 using the ILS. For today's flight, I'm going to cruise at flight level 330, so I will need to input that on the navigation and log. So the ATC will automatically set up my cruising flight level. As you can see here, our flight plan is all good. The waypoints is complete, and our flight time will be 3 hours and 1 minute. I think we're ready at this main menu, so let's fly. Okay, we're already inside of our aircraft, the A320neo. The first thing you need to do is turn on the aircraft's electrical systems and set up the overhead panel. The overhead panel is located on top of the cockpit, and it is the nerve center of the aircraft systems. Firstly, you will turn on battery number 1 and number 2, and followed by the external power for powering the aircraft before our aircraft use its own engines such as the main engine and APU. But we must make sure that external power is available. If it is not available, then we can directly turn on the APU. Second, set up the air gears by switching all 3 switches to the nav position. The air gears supplies aircraft position, speed, altitude, and air data for the aircraft systems. Third, you can turn on all of the fuel pumps in order to turn on the engines. Fourth, we can turn on the APU or auxiliary power unit by switching on the APU master switch and APU start button. The APU provides energy for functions other than propulsion, such as electricity. Then we can turn on the crew oxygen supply. The APU will not be available straight up, so you will need to monitor it on the lower ECAM by pressing the APU button. If it is already available, then there will be a sign there that says the APU is already available. And fifth, you will turn on the exterior and interior lights and the cabin signs. In this, let's say, cockpit preparation phase, right now you will only need the strobe lights and nav and logo light to be on. Seatbelt signs and no smoking signs are compulsory action to be switched on in this phase. And then don't forget to set the emergency exit light to arm. With that, the overhead panel is all done. Now, the next thing you need to do is to turn on all of the brightness, such as the left primary flight display and the navigation display or PFD&D, the autopilot, the integrated secondary instrument or the ISI, the right PFD&D, upper and lower electronic centralized aircraft monitor or ECAM, and then the multifunction control and display unit or the MCDU. After that, you will need to set up the MCDU. MCDU is essentially the brains of the aircraft, where you can program lots of things like your flight plan, performance, and many other things that might control any sort of systems within the aircraft. So the first thing is to select the desired system for the MCDU, that is the FMGC. Second, you will go to the initialization, and because we already set up the flight number and from/to airport on the main menu of the game, then the MCDU already set this up automatically. What you will do here is just inserting the numbers of cost index and the cruising flight level. According to the SimBrief website, my cost index in today's flight will be 12, and my cruising flight level will be flight level 330. Now it comes to the IRS initialization, where it is the aircraft's gyroscopes, compass, gimbals, and all other systems that operate within the aircraft in terms of sensors and works alongside the GPS to tell where the aircraft is and how the aircraft's flying. So basically, you will need these two lines on reference and confirm a line. Then you will need to go to the next page of this initialization to insert the zero fuel weight / zero fuel weight center of gravity and the block fuel on board. Usually the Airbus A320neo zero fuel weight / zero fuel weight center of gravity is 50.2/21.7. To know your fuel on board, you can just check on the upper ecam under FOB. Right now, my fuel on board is 14,200 kilograms, so we will insert that on the MCU by pressing 14.200. Now we're going to the flight plan. Because we already input the flight plan on the main menu, then we don't need to bother with this flight plan anymore. So next is the performance. In here, we only need to input the takeoff flaps that are 1, the V-speeds. The V-speeds consist of V1, VR, and V2. V1 is the speed by which time the decision to continue to take off or not if an engine fails. VR is the speed when the aircraft is all good to rotate up to the skies, and V2 is the minimum speed that needs to be maintained up to acceleration altitude. To input our aircraft V-speeds, we only need to double-click on the V-speeds boxes right here. So the V1 is 131 knots, the VR is 132 knots, and the V2 is 136 knots. And now we're going to insert the transition altitude that is 11,000 feet in Indonesia's airspace. If you are inbound to land on an ILS runway, then on the radio and navigation, the frequency and the course will also be automatically set up. Now, after the MCU is finished, we can request IFR clearance from the air traffic controller.
Clearance delivery ID 6170 IFR to Pattimura ready to copy.
When the ATC reads our squawk code and our first altitude, then we must set that up on our aircraft. Autopilot is the place for setting up your first altitude, and the right lower pedestal is the place where you must put your squawk code in. So now we're going to set our first altitude that is 1200 feet. After we put our first climb altitude, we can push the left and right flight director that is designed to help you manually control the plane that will appear on the PFD. Now we can set our squawk code that is different from the ATC, that is 6502. After you put on your squawk code, you can also put the TCAS to TARA and the ATC to auto. TCAS is an airborne system designed to increase cockpit awareness of nearby aircraft and serves as a last defense against mid-air collisions. The next step is to go to the left lower pedestal, then set the predictive windshield to automatic and turn on the weather radar. Essentially select system 1 or 2 and the weather will appear on your ND. Alright, finally we are ready to board the plane with passengers and their baggage by calling the ground services. When boarding, you can check the APU if it is available. If it is already available, then we can turn on the APU bleed, wait until the APU bleed is stable, then turn off the external power. Okay, now while waiting, we can check our flight plan by switching the MD to plane and using the MCU. We can select the flight plan using the up and down arrow to go from waypoint to waypoint. Okay, now the flight plan is all good. What we're going to do now is just wait until the boarding is finished. Okay, the doors are closed. We can assume that the boarding is finished. For pushback, we can turn on the beacon light and the wing light to let the ground crew know that we are all ready for pushback. After that, we can request pushback to the ATC.
Ground ID 6170 requesting pushback.
When pushback, we will start up our main engines, so we will set the engine mode selector to IGN/start. Now we will wait for the push truck to put pressure onto our nose gear. And when it does, we can release the parking brake and set the engine number to on. While starting up our engines, we have to monitor our engine and the lower E cam by pressing the engine button and wait until it is available and stabilized to start the next engine. Okay, engine number 2 is available. Now we can turn on engine number 1. Now that the pushback is finished, we can set the parking brake. And you can see here the engine number 1 is available. We can switch the engine mode selector back to normal and turn off the APU by pressing the APU bleed and APU master switch to off. And now we can check our flight control by pressing the flight control button on the upper pedestal and monitor it on the lower E cam. Now we can check it by turning the ailerons to full left, full right, neutral, elevators to full up, full down, neutral, rudders, full left, full right, neutral. Then don't forget to set up the pitch screen in case you accidentally press it to 0. For takeoff, we can set the flaps to 1 and spoilers to arm. Okay, now we're ready for taxi. We can ask the taxi clearance to the ATC and then switch the nose light to taxi. Okay, we can release the parking brake now. And while taxiing, we cannot exceed 40 knots and we must follow the yellow line on the taxiway. Now we're taxiing to the runway. We can push the takeoff config and set the auto brake to max. Okay, now we're near the assigned runway. At this stage, we must stop at the holding point where it is the yellow line there. Then we can request the takeoff clearance to the tower. Now we're going to the overhead panel. We can notify the cabin and tell them that we are ready to take off. Then we can turn on the runway turn-off lights, landing lights, and set the nose light to take off. Okay, we're already clear for takeoff. We can line up the runway, runway 25 right. Okay, we can stop here first and do our final check for takeoff. I think it's all good. We are ready. So for takeoff, we can set the throttle to max power. But before that, we have to check first if the engine is stabilized at 50%. Then if it is stabilized, we can max the thrust to man, toga, SRS, and runway. $80 knots. 100 knots. V1, rotate. V2, positive climb, gear up. Okay, we can follow the flight director here on the PFD before we turn on our autopilot.
ID6170, contact Jakarta Center on 120.9
Okay, the PFD already tell us to lever climb, so we can put the thrust to climb for auto throttle.
Jakarta Center ID6170 is climbing through 2,100 feet for 12,000 feet.
You can put flaps up now, and we will engage autopilot later on.
Landmark Niner 43 Airport is at your 10 o'clock 12 miles. Maintain present heading and altitude, report runway in sight.
Okay, the weather is good.
Landmark 5928, please expedite your climb to
You can engage the autopilot one now. Okay, after takeoff checklist, we can set the spoilers to disarm. Flaps already up, gear already up, autopilot on, nose lights off. After takeoff checklist complete. Below 10,000 feet, there is a restriction of speed that is 250 knots, so we must follow that restriction. Okay, we're nearing 10,000 feet. We can turn off the running turn off lights and retract the lagging lights. And don't forget to engage manage speed mode. So because we are above 10,000 feet, we can now throttle up to greater than 250 knots. At transition altitude at is 11,000 feet, we can set the barometric pressure to standard. Now we have reached our first climb altitude. What we'll do is just follow the ATC clearance to climb to our next altitude until we have reached cruising level. At flight level 180, if the wind is calm and there is no bad weather, we can turn off the seatbelt sign so the passenger can walk around our cabin. Okay, now we have arrived at our cruising level, that is flight level 330. At cruising level, we can wait until the ATC clears us to descend to our destination airport. And while cruising, we have to monitor the weather and wind. If the weather and wind becomes bad, then we can turn back on the seatbelt signs until it becomes stable. Okay, we're nearing Ambon, about 120 nautical miles away. As you can see here, there is a restriction of altitude in Alpha 1 that is above 6,900 feet, and we will descend shortly here. We'll have to wait. Oh, there you go. The ATC clears us to descend to flight level 250. We will have to set back on our altitude now, and when descending, we have to turn on the seatbelt signs down and auto brakes to medium for landing. We can select the engage manage mode here, and on the performance we can set our approach phase. What we'll do is just set the transition altitude, that is the same like Jakarta, it is 11,000 feet.
Somewhere by the emerald sea, where the moon and water meet, somewhere close to harmony, when the world is sound asleep. Something's gonna bring the change, journeys we are meant to take, something at the edge of space, calling us to fly away. Don't you be afraid, everything will change. You and I, jumping off the edge. They say dreamers never die. So come and fly, come and fly, come and fly away with me.
Okay, we're now clear to Algri, the transition waypoint for ILS runway 04 at Ambon. We're 27 miles west. We are transition altitude, we can set back our barometric pressure to 29.92 for now. And below 10,000 feet, we have to set our speed to 250 knots, so we will set that and level off the plane first. We can use the speed brake or spoilers to help our speed, and at 10,000 feet, runway turn-off lights go on and landing lights go on. Okay, now we're at 250 knots. We can continue our descent. We will arm the spoilers now for landing. Okay, 298.80. We'll set that on the barometric pressure. And we will set that also in our MCU. Don't forget, I already set the DH or decision height for Ambon Pattimura, that is 500 feet. We will have to insert that on our MCU approach phase. We'll need to apply our speed brakes again to descend quickly. Now don't forget to put the barometric pressure to 29.80. We can use 100% of speed brakes now. Okay, we will have to go to Algri. We can engage back the speed. We are a bit too fast, but that is okay. Okay, we can push the ILS button now. You can see the diamond purple there. The ILS will display the ILS localizer and glide slope on the PFD to help us for landing.
Descend and maintain 1,700 feet ID 6170.
Weather is good here in Pattimura, Ambon. We can gauge our heading because we will manually do that with the localizer. We'll have to wait for the localizer now. Our airport is there, we can see the runway. We can set our speed brakes to arm now for landing. Okay, the localizer is alive. We can press that button now. The plane will automatically line up towards the runway. Okay, now we can activate the approach phase on our MCDU, so the plane speed will go down. As you can see there, the speed is going down automatically after we confirm the approach phase. Okay, now we're lining up to the runway.
ID 6170.
Okay, we can contact the tower now.
Contact Pattimura Tower on 122.2 when inbound. Tower on
122.2. Okay, our ILS will be Cat 3 single. You can see the temperature of the airport here. It is 27 degrees Celsius. You can put that on our MCU, and also the wind. That is 318 at 12. 27 for temperature and 318 at 12 for the wind. Okay, our MCU is complete now. At 10 miles, we can set the flaps to 1. Now we will have to wait for the glide slope. Then we can press the approach button. You can see there, that is the runway. Seven point 7.5 miles, nautical miles, flaps 2. And see here, the glide slope is live, but we have not captured it yet. Five nautical miles, 6 nautical miles, flaps 3, speed check flaps 3. We can call the cabin. Okay, we're clear to land now. Glide slope captured. We can turn on the approach mode. 5 nautical miles, speed check flaps full, and landing gear down. Okay, cam memo all green, no blue. We're good For landing, you can see the external view here. Our plane is ready. Don't forget to set the missed approach altitude. In Ambon Pattimura, it is 4,100 feet. 1,000 is checked. So at the minimum altitude, that is 500 feet, you must turn off the autopilot if you are committed to land. This means that we have to manually control the aircraft. However, you can turn it off before minimum altitude. You can see there is a light beside the runway. 2 green and 2 red means our altitude is good. No green means we are too low, and no red means we are too high. And see there, that is the minimum call-out. We will continue. And don't forget to set the nose light to take off. 400 is checked. Okay, we're good here. Can flare now. Retard means we will have to put the thrust back to idle. Touchdown. We can put our thrust to reverse. We can use the rudders to line up on the runway. Okay, 60 knots. Set the thrust back to idle. Auto brakes off. We can turn next taxiway here. When we leave the runway, we can retract our flaps, turn off the runway turn off lights, and retract our landing lights. Set the nose light to taxi. Before taxi to the gate, we must contact the ground and ask for clearance. While doing that, we can stop at the holding point. That is the yellow line right there.
Pattimura Airport information like 0.
We can set our parking brakes here. We can turn off our strobe light. And we can start the AP right now, so it will be available when we are already at the gate.
Pattimura ground ID 6170 taxi to the gate. ID 6170 taxi to gate 2.
Okay, we can turn off the LS auto throttle and approach.
Gate to ID 6170.
Okay, now we're all good. That means we are ready to taxi to the gate and park there to deboard the passengers and their baggage. Same as before, we cannot exceed 40 knots while taxiing. If we are at the correct gate, like the ATC told us, there will be a ground crew that will help us to perfectly park our plane at the gate. If there is no ground crew, then we can check with the external view. Okay, we can stop right here. Parking brake set. click a little bit more. Okay, that is good. Okay, for parking, let's set the parking brakes, and if the APU is already available, we can turn on the APU bleed. After turning on the APU bleed, we can turn off our engines. And don't forget to turn off the external lights, such as the nose light, beacon light, and then the wind light. To deboard the plane, the passengers need to get out of their seat. That's why I already turned back off the seatbelt signs. Now we can call the ground services and that is it. Welcome to Ambon.
ID 6170, the jetway is going to be connected.
We can monitor the doors here in our lower cam. Press the door button. And if you want to turn off your APU, you can turn it off and use the external power if it is available.
Something's gonna bring the change. Journeys we are
Alright, that is it for my Airbus A320 Neo tutorial. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.